Hey guys, my name's Nicole, and today I'm going to try and explain the steps of the pre-trial process for our criminology class, and I'm also going to give a few examples of people who didn't make it all the way through that process. So beginning with arrest, this is how any type of criminal prosecution typically begins. A police officer can arrest you if they see you committing a crime, if they have probable cause to believe that you've committed a crime, or if they have a valid arrest warrant. So pat down or search. If you're stopped by the police, they can perform a pat down. Once you're arrested, they can do a full-blown search, and they can search your person, they can search your immediate surroundings, and they can also search your vehicle if that was taken into possession. They will secure any personal property or money that you have and ask you to sign an inventory for that, and they will hold it. Am I free to go? So when you are making contact with the police, it's very important to ask, am I free to go? Am I being arrested? Because there is a certain set of legal procedures that the police will follow to comply with your legal and constitutional rights. And an arrest occurs when police take you into custody, and it's complete the moment that you are no longer free to walk away from the arresting officer. Now, Elijah McClain is getting a lot of coverage in the news lately. This is an older case from last summer, and he lived in Colorado. He took a trip to the convenience store to buy his brother an iced tea, and he purchased that iced tea. He got a bag, he got a receipt, but he wore a ski mask to the store. Now, his family said that he suffered from anemia and he got cold easily. He's also a self-proclaimed introvert, so there may have been some social anxiety going on there. Somebody saw him walking down the street after he left the store and said that he looked suspicious. There was a guy in a ski mask walking around at night. So when the police pulled up, he asked them to please respect his space, that he was an introvert, that he was going to turn his music off so he could hear them and produce his identification. They took physical hold of him and demanded that he stop tensing up. There was some kind of scuffle that ensued. The police accused him of grabbing or going for one of their weapons. It's not clear because the video body cams were knocked off of the police in the process, so there's no evidence that he did actually reach for a weapon. Now, he was restrained in a chokehold. He was held for 15 minutes. During that time, he vomited, he lost consciousness, he apologized for throwing up, he pleaded. He said, "I can't breathe, I'm just different, I'm so sorry. I don't do any fighting, I don't even kill flies, I don't eat meat, I respect all life. Forgive me, I'll do better." These were some of his last words, because after 15 minutes of being held on the ground, struggling to breathe, the EMTs arrived, who were called because he had lost consciousness and he had vomited. And this is where it gets really scary, even more scary, because in Colorado, and apparently in a lot of states, it is completely legal for a responding EMT to use the horse tranquilizer ketamine to stabilize a person. Now, they claimed that he needed to be stabilized. He didn't seem like he needed to be stabilized. Either way, he was 140 pounds, but they gave him 500 milligrams of ketamine, which was about twice the therapeutic dose for someone his size. He likely felt like he was losing his mind once that drug kicked in, and they loaded him into the ambulance. Now, the arresting officers took some photos mocking the chokehold that they put him in, and put it into a group text where they all kind of laughed at him. During this time, he was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. He had a heart attack. When he got to the hospital, he was put on life support, and his family subsequently removed him from life support because he was completely brain dead. Luckily, his case has come back into the news, it's come to light, and hopefully some laws will change because of this. And it's really sad that a young man had to lose his life in this way. It's really horrific. So let's say you're being arrested and this doesn't happen to you. Once you're arrested, if you are going to be interrogated, the police will read you your Miranda rights. So it's not like in the movies where they have to read these to you as soon as they put the cuffs on, but if they're going to interrogate you, they must read these rights. Anything you say before that is not really supposed to be valid in court. Now, from detention to booking, you should be charged with a crime within a reasonable amount of time. That's usually like several hours or overnight. Different states have varying laws. They range from 48 to 72 hours. The booking process is basically the police will ask you for information about yourself, like your address, your date of birth. They'll fingerprint you, photograph you. You may have to participate in a lineup or provide some kind of handwriting sample or something like that. Now, if they decide that it's a minor offense, they may issue you a citation with instructions to appear at a later date. But if the arresting officer decides that they do not want to issue you a citation, it could be based on the crime that you've committed, whatever criminal history you have, whatever reason, they're going to give that recommendation to the bail commissioner, who is then going to give it to the judge, and the judge is going to take that and run with it, make a decision in about 20 seconds. So now you've had bail set, and you have to think about money. Can you pay for it? Can you afford to hire a bail bondsman? What about work? What about bills? What about family? So let's get into that. If you can't make bail, that's okay. A lot of people can't do that, so you're not alone. In fact, you'll actually be in the majority of prisoners because 74% of people that are held in jails are not actually convicted of any crime yet. And my arrow has stopped short here, and I'm sorry, but this section right here is what you want to look at for people who are being held that are not convicted versus those who are convicted. That's quite a difference. You might be thinking, like, how is this happening? That's super crazy, because that's what I was thinking. Well, the median bail amount that is set is $10,000. The median annual income of a male who is detained pre-trial is about $15,000 a year. For a female, $11,000 a year. If we compare that with the median income for the United States, it's way below, way below. So $10,000, even if you've got to come up with 10% of that, that's still $1,000. If we're looking at the women here, that's going to be more than the median income of a woman for what she makes in just 1 month. It's more than she makes in a month. So not only can she not afford to pay cash for that, but she's also likely to not have the collateral to put up for a bail bondsman, and the same with a male who's been arrested and can't afford bail. There's not that much of an income difference there. If you can't make the bills, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, coming up with 10% is pretty impossible, and coming up with collateral for a bail bondsman and also paying the fees is also pretty near impossible. So that was rough, but it gets rougher because once you can't make bail, you're more likely to be convicted and face harsher penalties. You have less access to your attorney. You're going to show up in court wearing prison clothes, and you're more likely to take a guilty plea. So let's look at those parts right here. You have 3 options. You can hire private counsel, which is expensive. It's complicated. It's also typically going to be more money than the fees and fines that you would face if you were convicted. You can go with the public defender, but they have a bad rep. They're overworked. And you may even be berated by the judge for not hiring your own counsel or just pleading guilty. And the third option is you can just go ahead and take that guilty plea. So let's say that you're in prison or you're in jail and you can't afford bail. You likely cannot afford a private attorney, which really sucks. An evaluation in Fresno County showed that the average public defender was assigned 1,000 cases per year. 150 is actually the recommended. So they did the math on that and was something like 3 to 7 minutes to prepare each case for trial. Imagine having to learn the facts to complete a test on the subject in that amount of time. I don't know about you guys, but I would definitely be failing. So now you're showing up to court, you're wearing prison clothes, you're not looking fresh and clean, you really don't have much of a chance. You do have a right to a speedy trial, but it's not maybe what you think it is. Once you're arrested and booked, your case is provided to the appropriate prosecutor's office, where an independent decision is made as to what charges should be filed, if any. You have the right to a speedy trial, which usually means the prosecutor must file any charges within 72 hours or 48 hours in some states. But a prosecutor is not bound by this initial charge decision, and they can later change the crimes charged once more evidence is obtained. If you're going this route, your next step is going to be arraignment. This is where you would make your first court appearance at the arraignment. And during this time, the judge would read the charges filed against you and the complaint whatever's in the complaint, and you can choose whether or not you're going to plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest to those charges. They may also at this time review your bail and set dates for future proceedings. So preliminary hearing or grand jury proceedings, can probable cause be established? Both of these procedures are set up to decide if probable cause can be established. Now, if you're being charged federally, it must be by grand jury, but a state can choose either one of these processes. If there is no finding of probable cause, then you will not be forced to stand trial. If you are forced to stand trial, you do face a lot of things along the way. There could be pretrial motions like continuances. Now, if you're behind bars already, this means waiting longer to have your case heard. It means serving more time in jail for a crime that you have not been charged or proven guilty of yet. And if you're not behind bars, it means taking more time off of work, losing wages, possibly losing your job, trying to figure out transportation, all of these things. The pretrial process, as we learned, can often be more of a punishment itself than what happens after a conviction. And there's an example of that. We've all heard Khalif Browder's story, which was extremely horrific, and it's not an isolated incident. 2 people died in custody here in Tucson just last year, and David Maxwell was one of them. He was being held in pretrial detention awaiting trial, and he had already spent over a year in jail. Part of that time he was in isolation, and when he was moved out, he was relocated to a disciplinary pod because of his behavior. He had filed he filed grievances according to deputy reports, but there was some kind of disturbance, and a correction officer went into his cell. He claims that Maxwell swung at him, and he instinctively swung back. Well, Maxwell fell to the ground, hit his head, and he did not get back up again. He died in jail waiting for his trial, and he had already been waiting over a year. So that is one of the things that can happen if you are forced to serve time before you've been convicted. And probably one of the reasons that people are more likely to just go ahead and take that guilty plea. It gets you back to your life, especially if they're offering you probation or something like that. You can get out, you don't have to lose your job. So actually, 95% of convictions are done by plea deals. And there's a lot of factors in that. People not wanting to go through the hassle of the legal system, weighing the pros and cons, public defenders not having time to prep for cases. A large majority of defendants never actually get their day in court. There's no judge, no jury of their peers, no collecting of the evidence of their innocence or any of those things. So that's kind of wild. Now, just some quick facts for you. This is from a different year, so I got this off of our PowerPoint. In 2014, it was 62.8% that were held that were not convicted. So you can see just in 6 years, we've gone up about, we've gone up to 74%. You can do the math. Was already a huge increase from the year 2000, so this number continues to rise, and it's actually responsible for the growing number of jails is actually the people that are being held pretrial. And 75% of those offenders in that year were found to be nonviolent on minor offenses or drug offenses. So here is just a quick list of some links where you can get some more information about Elijah McClain, the Tucson Second Chance Bail Fund, which is local here, David Maxwell's story, and also Prison Policy Initiative, which is where I get a lot of my statistics from, and they have a lot of really cool graphs and articles and information. So that's it, and thank you for listening.